Just wait for a minute, let the recording start. Yeah. So let me first introduce today's speaker, Dr. Amitabh Sinha, currently head TCG Digital's Big Data and Analytics practice for the Asia region and contributes to various strategic initiatives for the TCG group. Dr. Sinha has over 20 years of experience in technology and strategic consulting, both on the technology and digital strategy side. He has run projects with Fortune 100 companies in countries like USA, Canada, UK, Singapore, etc. Dr. Sinha started his career with IBM Watson Lab and has 5 patents with IBM. Thereafter, he worked for consulting majors like PwC UK, EY USA, and has run large BFSI ODCs based out of Singapore and Hong Kong. Dr. Sinha is an alumni of IIT Delhi, IIM Bangalore, Illinois Institute of Technology Chicago, and Carnegie Mellon University Pittsburgh. Apart from all these, he is an avid photography enthusiast and travel blogger. So today, Dr. Sinha in this session will be deliberating on the application of data analytics in the oil and gas sector, especially in petrochemical industry for remote monitoring of plant operation. So with this, I request Dr. Sinha to take over and start the presentation.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the kind words. Good morning once again, everyone. Hopefully, we'll have a very interesting session over the next 1.5 hours. I deliberately chose petrochemicals, especially the reason why, because see, if you look at petrochemicals, it is a very like a old industry, established industry, and there's a lot of money in the industry, but the evolution of that industry has only started very recently. So they call it industry 4.0. So prior to that, it was very conventional engineering. Okay. And so there were not too many changes on the technology side. There were not too many changes on the automation side. There were not too many changes on the IT and OT. Okay. But recently, over the last 1.5 years of my association with TCG Digital, I had the good fortune of working with two of the group companies, which is Haldia Petrochemicals as well as MCPI, Mitsubishi Chemicals Pty India Limited. And very recently, TCG Group has acquired Lamas Technologies from McDermott. Lamas Technologies is based out of US, Houston and Bloomfield, New Jersey. And they are into technology in the sense that they provide technology for gas cracking, they provide technology for polypropylene, they provide technology for isobutadiene. So they are typically into furnace technologies, cracker technologies. So recently TCG Group has acquired that. And so it's a win-win situation in the sense that Lamas brings in the core technology related to oil and gas, and TCG Digital primarily brings into data science, big data analytics capabilities, right? And with that, amalgamation, it has created a very interesting story. So today in the session, I will cover very interesting use cases. I'll show you demonstrations as well on how the conventional technologies amalgamated with machine learning and advanced intelligence has created a like a world of difference. Okay, so with that, let me start presenting my screen. So yes, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
but not the presentation. You have to open the presentation.
Sure, it is there.
Yes.
So you can see my presentation, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So this is typically the snapshot which I had which I had already submitted to ma'am. Let me just quickly take you. Sorry, this will not work. Okay. Now this is just a. I'm sure ma'am will share this with you. So I'm not getting into the details. The whole idea is that how does analytics come into manufacturing field in order to build the future. So what we have seen is, if you really look at this particular section of the screen, so see, what we are talking about is that any manufacturing industry actually generates hell lot of data. Okay, so there are data coming in from primarily PLCs, which is programmable logic controllers, which typically, for example, in a typical manufacturing plant, you would find furnaces, you will find compressors, you will find vibrating equipments, you will find pumps, etc. Right? So each one of them has their own controlling system. They're called typically distributed control system. So that's called DCS in short form. And then there are process technologies, like I was explaining, LAMAS. So where there is a gas cracker, there's a hydrocrackers of the world. So they are governed by something known as your historians. So there is a process historian, there is a data historian. So all these historians also generate hell lot of data. Now, as of yesterday, I mean yesteryears, let me stand corrected. So this data were all generated, and they used to be consumed by the, quote unquote, the instrumentation team, right, which is typically the control engineers, right, using control systems. And they used to use that data to kind of operate the plant, but that is where the data was restricted. Beyond that, the data had no visibility. For example, the head of the plant would not get an overarching view of the plant, which I mean that, let's see, if I take an example of Haldia Petrochemicals itself, Haldia Petrochemical has 9 individual sub plants, okay, and that corresponds to one full plant of operations of HPL. But the head of the plant would not have one single visibility of the entire plant. He or she would have individual visibility with respect to the cracker unit, visibility with respect to the storage units, visibility with respect to the downstream, but they're all disparate. There was no one uniformity, right? Now, what was the problem? The problem was that, so since this plant, these individual sub plants are so very dependent with each other, right? So let's say from the storage, the raw material should flow into, as a matter of fact, your cracker unit. From the cracker unit, there are downstream products which got created. Now those downstream products would again go into your downstream units, right? So each one of them is dependent on the other. For example, if something goes wrong in the storage tanks, the storage tank is not able to supply the raw material to the cracker unit. The cracker unit will be wasting the energy, right? The fuel gas and the charge gas unnecessarily, and not because the raw material is not coming in, and hence will not be able to utilize it to that extent that it is supposed to be. Result, lesser productivity, right? Lesser productivity, loss of productivity. Now, if I talk about the downstream again, let's say if the cracker unit is not producing optimal downstream, right, or is producing downstream in a manner which is not correlated to the production demands of the downstream plant, then it is of no consequence, right? So it's all disparate. So the first and foremost was to connect the disparate data, get all the data, unify all the data sources into one data management system. So that's primary, number one. Number two, easily adopt across the entire company. Now, in this case, we are talking about the entire plant, right? And why plant? Let's say the plant, of course, is in charge of the manufacturing, right? But what about logistics? The logistics is handled centrally by the head office, right? So they are in charge of procurement. They are also in charge of the sales, right? Now, it is very important to understand that, for example, what is the market demand? So you're based on the market demand, the production planning should be done. Based on the production planning, basically what amount of raw material should be consumed to provide what amount of downstream products, what amount of bagging should be done, what amount of outbound logistics, right? Take down the end products and go to the market. So the entire thing needs to be correlated, right? And so they need to be adapted across the plant, across the office itself, head office itself. And as a result, deliver insights at the edge. For example, the CFO, for example, the COO should have a very high level visibility, right, of the profit per hour, let's say. So at a real time view, correct? As of yesteryears, they were all calculated as a post facto, right? last, for example, let's say sitting in October, the analysis could only be done of August at best, if not July, right? September is out of question. Now, what is the problem? The problem is you are doing a post-fact analysis 1 month or 2 months down the line. So by the time you realize there are lacunas which need to be corrected and the corresponding action needs to be taken, it will be quite late, right? So that is why it is important to get real-time data so that one is able to utilize that. Now, so what does this mean? This means that connect operations to industrial IoT, which is the plant, connect with supply chain and logistics, which I just explained, streamline sales and operations planning as well. So they are very closely tied. And in order to, embark on the journey of manufacturing 4.0, all these are very critical blocks, right? Manufacturing cannot work without procurement, right? Sales cannot work without manufacturing, and manufacturing will just keep producing uselessly if the sales team cannot sell, right? So again, the logistics also come in each of these areas. So what is the bottom line? The bottom line is that you need to go and basically coordinate everything. So how do you start? So this is all good to know, right? How do you start? So you need to know your KPIs. So what are the KPIs, key process indicators, that one would like to monitor? Now, this is obviously top down. So the CFO, COO, CEO, or we call it whole time director in case of a plant operations or a manufacturing unit, they would have their own KPIs, right? The CFO would see the profitability, right? The profit per hour. The plant head would actually see yield, right? Yield and optimized yield. The manufacturing head, your procurement head would actually look at the best value of production, right? The best value purchase of raw materials. Similarly, the sales head would actually go and see that how can he or she get the best quality out, so be able to garner the highest rate in the market, right? So these are all KPIs. Now if you take this into consideration, so how can they help? So advanced analytics maximizes operations performance through three main applications, right? Now, so if I go down to the plan, this is predictive maintenance, maximize opening time of critical assets, leveraging big data to predict and anticipate failures. Number two, yield throughput, which is maximize the yield or throughput of the individual assets by optimizing working parameters based on big data analysis, and system supply chain dynamic optimization. So if you look at these three important things, all these three important, so how do you realize that these are the three most important things? Very simple. You understand Pareto, right? The top 20% of your KPIs or your processes, whatever you call, would contribute to 80% of your benefit very clearly. So that way, that is the reason using Pareto analysis, we picked up these three things. So predictive maintenance is, so for example, any manufacturing plant, the assets, the individual furnaces, etc., they are the key. So if you can ensure that they are maintained properly and there is no breakdown, hence there is no shutdown of the plant, your plant is operational, so which means it will keep producing. If it keeps producing, you will be able to sell them and make money, right? So that's one. Number two is the yield and throughput. So while the point number one ensures that the assets are running optimally, right? Your process number two will ensure that you use the right raw material quality. You operate on the right operating constraints, right? For example, on the raw material, let's say if I take example of Haldia Petrochemical buys or purchases naphtha. Now, naphtha has quality parameters built in. So it is called PONA. It's called paraffin, olefin, naphthalene, and aromatic. So those are the four parameters or individual chemicals which constitute naphtha. So the quality of naphtha is determined by for example, the percentage of paraffin, olefin, naphthalene, and aromatics, right? So HPL typically would like to go and buy an optimal quality. For example, if you're looking at the best quality naphtha, the paraffin content will be more than 85%. But obviously that quality of naphtha will come at a high cost, right? So is there a way that you can buy slightly lower quality naphtha, let's say about 82, 83%, which will not be the best quality, but can you improve your process parameters? So what we have seen is when I got involved in these 3 projects, I realized that you can obviously go and buy a lower quality naphtha, but the lower quality naphtha also has certain impurities, right? It has silicon, it has cadmium, it has manganese, and those catalysts need to be treated, or impurities need to be treated, right, and removed. Then the paraffin content will naturally go up. And what are we talking about? We are talking about not less than $40-45 per ton, and that's a huge amount of saving the plant can do if you are able to buy a low quality naphtha which will have those impurities, but you can actually have a distillation process inbuilt where you can distillate out the impurities and hence increase the quality. So that's for the raw material side. Now once this raw material gets into the naphtha cracker unit, NCU, so there the process constraints, for example, COT, coil output temperature, coil output pressure, so you can regulate and moderate this process operating constraints and thereby increase your yield or throughput. Now, it is not a directly as I said, it's not a direct ratio, right? Direct ratio. It's not directly proportional. Why? Because you can't keep increasing your COT beyond a reasonable limit. Now, any of you who have some idea about productions operations management, many of you may teach that subject as well. We have a concept of a control chart. The control chart is used to identify process outliers, right, or performance outliers. So there we take into consideration your process capability, which is typically your mean plus minus 3 sigma, which is the standard deviation, right? So that's your process capability. So UCL is your mean plus 3 sigma, or 3 into standard deviation, and your LSL, or the lower specification limit, is mean minus 3 into standard deviation, or 3 sigma. So though this is typically the operating constraints, right? So which means for a coil output temperature, similarly you will have a like a LSL, lower specification limit. You will also have an upper specification limit, USL. So which means you can operate the furnace between that temperature, okay, or the coil in that temperature, which is fine. That this is typically like the design principle. But there are certain constraints also. What are the constraints? If you, let's say, if you run the plant near your USL, near your upper specification limit, which means at a high coil output temperature, what will happen is it will result in coking. Okay, so which means coke is a carbon, right? So carbon residue. So this is your organic chemistry, right? So naphtha is about nothing but a combination of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and various combinations of it. So a lot of carbon will get deposited, and then what will happen is your furnace needs to be shut down and it has to undergo decoking to remove the coke. So that is a constant. So though it is within the design parameters, you still cannot run at a very high COT. It will not be acceptable, right? So that is so that's important. Now so then you'll have so this yield throughput is all about working on the optimal quality of naphtha at an optimal price, working on the cracker unit so that it's an optimal one. It should not be like a very high temperature, so that you get into a lot of coking, and hence you reach the run length. Run length is typically the time period after which the furnace needs to be shut down for decoking, right? So then it's a combination of both. That's what. And then the last one is a system supply chain dynamic optimization with advanced modeling. Now what does this mean? This means that the marketing team would actually, they know the pulse of the market, right? They have historical data, they also have some feelers. So can we create a model, okay, to do a forecasting that, okay, based on your historical pattern, based on your products, based on your your captive clients, as well as your, let's say, market. So there's a lot of hedging and there's a lot of commodity trading that are generally done. So based on that, can a forecasting model create a 3 months demand, right? Based on the 3 months demand, can we plan the production? Okay, so plan the production means that, okay, so this is the demand for next 3 months across various geographies of India. And so in order to, let's say this is October, so I'm doing for November, December and January. So in order to, for example, the supply to reach, let's say 15th of November at, let's say Mumbai, okay, or in the West Coast. So the truck needs to leave the plant, let's say 7 days prior, argument's sake, which is leave on 7th of November. So in order to for the truck or number of trucks to leave on 7th of November, I need to have that quality, we call it monomers and polymers. I will explain that shortly. That needs to be produced by 6th, that particular volume, so that the loading can happen, and the 7th, the trucks can be dispatched. So if the production needs to be finalized by 6th, the production needs to start from 4th, right? So which means the cracking should start on 4th and the downstream product should be ready. So by 6th, it should be ready. So it takes about 2 days, right? So 4th, it should start, 4th of November. So if it starts from 4th of November, I need the naphtha to be in place by 3rd of November. Now, if the naphtha is not locally, many times the naphtha is not locally procured from India. So in order to meet that demand, so if I need to have that particular quality, 84% Piona quality of naphtha by 3rd of November, then it will come from where? It will come from, let's say, Japan, right? So if it comes from Japan, it needs to, start coming in from your, it should be ordered by, let's say, 15th of October, and then it has to be dispatched on 17th. Give me a second. আপনি নিচে আছেন কি? হ্যাঁ, আপনি ওই দেখুন এসবিআই এটিএম এর পাশে যে লোহার গেটটা আছে ওটা দিয়ে ঢুকে যান, ঢুকে গিয়ে দেখুন দুটো ব্লক আছে, ব্লক পাশ দিয়ে, হ্যাঁ, একটা লোহার গেট আছে, ওটা দিয়ে ঢুকে, ঠিক আছে? মাছ বসে আছে, এসবিআই ব্যাংক এবং এটিএম এর পাশে রাস্তা দিয়ে ঢুকে যান, দুটো ব্লক আছে, এ আর বি। বি ব্লকের লিফটে উঠে 4 তলায় নেমে ডান দিকে, ওকে? Okay, so you understand, so that's the complexity of the planning, right? And this is typically with one byproduct, with one region, which is, let's say, west. Similarly, south will have the need for a different grade. Now for a different grade, how will that manufacturing work, right? So where do we, so how should we plan that production? How should we plan that procurement? Where should we give the order? So it's fairly complex. But you realize that if you're able to solve these 3 problems, we are looking at a fairly advanced analytics, machine learning driven plant with lot of benefits, right? So what we have seen is there is something called, value at stake. So what we mean by value at stake? So value at stake is, complexity of the problem as it goes up, the value at stake also goes up, right? So which means if you're able to solve the, let's say, of the predictive maintenance, yield optimization, as well as your supply chain, if you're able to solve them, obviously your value at stake will be higher, and actually the complexity of the problem will also be low. The question is, shall we take all the opportunities together? May not be possible, right? So it has to be taken, for example, one step at a time. And so typically, what are the different, baby steps? So inventory optimization. So inventory optimization is where you optimize the inventory. Now, please keep this in mind. In case of a manufacturing unit, unlike a retail, if you're talking about a, kirana shop, right? Or you're talking about a hypermarket or a superstore, something like you would be familiar with Spencer's, Reliance Fresh, more retails of the world, right? So there, the inventory is one side, okay? So one side in the sense that what is your stock? Your stock of the individual SKUs, right? Stock keeping units. So either at your godown or at your shop. But in case of manufacturing, the inventory is of two types. The incoming inventory, or we call it inward inventory, which is typically the raw materials, right? And then there is the outgoing or outward inventory, which is the end products. So both of them needs to be optimized, because any plant would have storages which are fairly fixed in nature. So the incoming naphtha can only, it will have, so many, gallons, like, million gallons or million tons, that kind of a concept, right? So let's say X million ton of naphtha can only be in the inward inventory. Similarly, the outward inventory can only have, let's say A amount of grade 1, B amount of grade 2 capacity, and you can't mix them, right? So inventory optimization is one. You don't want your money to, stay there and then get blocked. And then typically we are talking about, the optimization of the yield. So this is an ideal example of an operating person who is actually sitting and looking at the different, levers through which the yield can be increased. And then of course, then this is how the new horizons can be explored, right? So this is the context. And let me, I will of course show you the different, for example, I'll take you to the PPTs as well, but along with that, let me also show you something you will be able to relate very well. Just give me a second. So while this opens up, let me show you this. So this is the company that I work with, TCG Digital, and there are oil and gas solutions on this. Okay. Now, if I look at the oil and gas solutions, hello, fourth floor, lift থেকে নেমে ডান দিকে দাঁড়িয়ে দেখুন, আপনার এটা কলিং বেল বাজান না, ডান দিকে লিফট থেকে নেমে ডান দিকে। All right. So this is opening up. This should also open up. So now what I'm showing you is, so this is typically Llamas Digital, okay? And from here, let me show you something very interesting. I'll come to the PPT, but let me show you something in action, which is a very interesting piece. Now, just to check, all of you are able to see my screen, right? Hello? Am I audible? People are able to listen?
Yes, you are audible, sir, but your PPT is not visible. What we are showing, I think it's closed now.
No. So this is what I wanted to show. Can you see this? This is,
sir.
yeah. So this is called the battery limit of the plant. Okay. So if you really look at it, this is a real plant and a 2D view. You may have come across this terminology called digital twin, right? So it is typically depicting the plant digitally. This is a classical example of that. This is Haldia Petrochemicals. Okay. So on the left hand side, these are your tanks. If you see A, B, C, D, E, and F, these are tanks and they have different volumes of naphtha in it, right? And so this is like and then we are getting in real-time data. So this is 4th October, the last data came in at 5 o'clock in the morning. And at this particular point in time, tank C and tank F, they are getting blended. So which means tank C has a quality of naphtha, tank F has a different quality of naphtha. So we are blending this here, and this blending is also done through machine learning, forecasting. For example, let's say and let me explain you this. This is the cracker unit. The cracker unit takes in naphtha. So in order to produce a and end product, the cracker unit expects, let's say, about 83% paraffin content. Now, so what we are suggesting is that, between tank C and tank F, if you blend using, let's say, 40-60 ratio, where tank C has a higher quality and tank F has a lower quality, you will get the desired result. So which means it is an optimal blending that goes into. So this is your NOT control room, which controls the tank, and then it goes to the heart of the plant, which is NCU, naphtha cracker unit. Now this is, you see the naphtha is going in at 180.3 tons per hour, and these are F1 to F9 are your furnaces, and each of them has a different temperature. So see, this is the naphtha feed that is going in, and what you see is this is called the product slate output. So this is ethylene, propylene, CFO mix, RPG, and fuel gas. This is the output from the naphtha cracker unit, and they get stored into the different intermediate storages, right? So this is your see, for example, in this case, ethylene, propylene, C4 mix, right? You have in RPG here, so on and so forth. So these are your intermediate storages. Okay. Now, and each of them is controlled by a plant. The blue ones are your smaller plants. I was talking about, right, that HPL has about 9 plants, sub plants. So these are your sub plants, right? NCR, SCR, NCU, OCG, CPP, etc. So ECR is the East Control Room, which takes care of the intermediate storages. And on the right hand side, what you see is a downstream plants. So for example, the product ethylene, so HDP stands for high density polyethylene. So it takes into ethylene. Okay, there are 2 trains, which is typically like 2 manufacturing beds. We call it HDP train 1 and train 2. If you look at it, it is taking in 2 different volume of naphtha, and then this is an extruder, and from that extruder, there is this end product which is called F5400. This is a grade of HTP which is getting produced, and see, this is the rate at which it is 197.4 tons. So this is how it is getting bagged. Part of it is going exported, part of it is going to domestic, right? Similarly for train 2, see, it is taking in 20 tons per hour. The extruded throughput is also 20 tons per hour, and it is actually producing a different grade called 6401. Now this 5400 grade is actually a medicinal grade plastic monomer. So what HPL produces are granules of monomers, white granules, right? They look like thermocol balls, small balls of thermocol. And this 5400 is actually used for medicinal like equipments. For example, syringes, your medicinal bottles, and then different surgical plastic components, etc., etc. So this is a demand that has been placed by Dr. Reddy's laboratory, and so this is getting produced. Similarly, 6401, this is your food grade plastic. So which is typically used for food products. So this is I'm not sure if you are familiar. This is this order is going to Oriental Cuisine. So Oriental Cuisine is the company who has your chain restaurants like mainland China or Calcutta's of the world. Okay, so this is getting produced for them. So that's an HDP. Similarly, LLDP. So this is high density polyethylene. This is called low linear density polyethylene. So see, for example, this plant is under shutdown. Okay, so that is why you see that, for example, the extruder is not working. So this is actually in shutdown. So this is not working now. So this is going under maintenance. This is PP, which is polypropylene. So polypropylene, again, this is producing a particular grade called M110. and it is getting produced. So this polypropylene is typically used for your this is sent to your companies like Nilkamal Plastics, who actually manufacture furnitures and all that stuff. Okay, so that's your polypropylene. So the point is, what you see here is the entire battery limit of the plant. At any point in time, you know what is happening in the plant real time. Now this particular 2D digital system, digital twin, is available on a big screen near the WTD, near the CFO's respective rooms at health, at at Holdia head office. Okay, and they know what is happening real time. Okay, now again, let's say so this is called level 0, or this is the first level view, right? Now if you go to the second level view, what happens is you get to see different KPIs, right? So this is the operations KPI, this is the production KPI, this is the quality KPI, right? Now, so if you look at, for example, operations KPI, so this is your naphtha flow, coil output pressure, coil output temperature. So you get to see the different COP temperatures currently there, okay? And you want to see a trend. So this is okay, but you will find I think the data is getting refreshed. So this is in between that. But the point that I'm trying to say is, okay. But you will be able to see the trends. The trends are all there. You can see that in production as well. So at any point in time, you get to see what are the main KPIs, what is the naphtha, what is the LPG flow, so on and so forth, right? So all these data points are there available. So it's not on the entire plant data is not restricted only to the plant operations, but also available from the head office, right? And this is true for all. So for example, if you go to NCR, right? So if you look at NCR, then you will be able to see the trend as well. So the data is getting refreshed, which is fine. You can see the trend of all the compressor, you can see the compressor maintenance equipments, you can see the production parameters. So which pump is currently active, which pump is not, the daily totalizer value, okay, the trends, etc. So all this trending is possible. Unfortunately, the data is getting refreshed. So Sunday we do some maintenance, so that is why the data is getting refreshed. But what I'm trying to say is, at any point in time, you get all the KPIs and real-time values, right? Now this is a huge benefit, okay, for all the having the visibility itself. So that was the first thing, working with the disparate data, getting in all the data at one place, so that at any point in time you can actually go and work. Okay, so again, this is like a typical KPI report, right? So this is NCR's plant report, so you get to see what density is there, the quality itself, right? And this is your captive power plant, this is your water cut, highlights, interconsile, so everything is there. Last section of NCR, suction, at what is the ratio and each is getting blended, so it is all there. So all the KPIs that are there are all available. If there are certain manual tags, we can see the manual tags, so on and so forth. So that's the power of this particular. So this is what we call as remote monitoring. Okay, so this is typically what we call as the remote monitoring of the plant. Now this was one aspect I wanted to show. Now let's run through the slides. I wanted to show you something real in action. The company that I represent is TCG Digital. We are a US based headquartered company based out of New Jersey, but the major operations are of course in India. I run the practice for analytics and data science of TCG Digital primarily for the whole company, but I run the PNL for India as well. Now we have a platform. Now I just want to spend 1 minute on that particular platform, because this will help you to understand how we are able to do all this. So this is a big data analytics platform which is capable of ingesting data, storing the data, running advanced analytics on it, and then also visualization. So it's a 360-degree analytics. Okay. Now this is the architecture block actually. So this is the ingest layer. The ingest layer is capable of taking in data from transaction systems, different IT/OT tags, social media, flat files, etc., etc. Right. So what you saw here in that system that I showed is, so if you really see that, so there is the data is getting refreshed, okay, every 120 seconds, right? So if I go here, so for example on this, you will see that the polling in 109 seconds. So this will get refreshed. So this is a real-time data that is coming in from the plant, right? So this is the capability of IT/OT streaming data. So that's ingestion layer. Once we get the data, so it is also very important that in order to work on machine learning and advanced analytics, it is to be absolutely certain and important that you have the you, for example, you detect the noise and remove it, you understand the outliers and remove it, and you also transform the data, because see your DCS, so we are pulling in about 15,000 tags every 2 minutes, right? And so there are tags coming in from, you saw 9 plants, right, in all pump, compressors, furnaces, so on and so forth. So there are possibilities of data sometimes, because of error in flow meter, the different meters, the data reading can be wrong, correct? So that's possible. It can happen that some for example some sensor has actually gone offline, so it will not give any data as well. So it's very important that you actually process the data and transform the data. Now once we process and transform the data, we store the data, which is, we have different data stores to store it. Now this is typically, we call it a lake house. Why do we call it a lake house? See, this is neither a data lake, neither a data warehouse. If you're talking about banking parlance, it would be a data warehouse, right? And then if you talk about, for example, and in some cases, it would be data lake, right? Lot of data. But what we are doing here is we call it lake house because it's the best of data lake as well as data or warehouse, right? So we call it lake house. And what is different here? We are, so for example, for data coming in from IT/OT tags, so this is typically a name value pair, right? So there is this tag value IP21 something something dot pv. It will have a value on a particular timestamp, right? So this is a name value data. Again, we are getting in data from SAP, which is the price of the incoming naphtha and the quality parameters, right? So that's a structured data. So Lakehouse will have the capability of storing both, right? And once we get the data here, we can run advanced analytics. So we have all the algorithms built in. I'll show it to you, and we can use the different models to work on them. And then there is a visualization. See what you see, the 2D digital twin is actually a visualization. We similarly have dashboards, report, drill down analysis, what if analysis, etc. So what does it mean? This means that the platform has the capability of being one-stop shop for providing all the needs that are required for the manufacturing 4.0. Now the advanced analytics algorithm library. So these libraries are all built in. For example, if it is a regression problem, right? Regression problem is, so let's say given a set of naphtha, quality, desired quality, what should be the price point? So that's typically a regression. It's a forecasting model, right? So it's a time series forecasting model, very simple. So that's a regression problem, right? At what price point we can buy. Similarly, let's say given a particular quality of product that we are producing, what is the price that we can demand, right? So it's like a cross sell, which is a classification problem. Okay. Similarly, so those algorithms are all built in. Most importantly, what we also have is we have model evaluators. So the model, so which means a citizen data scientist who may not know how to write a Python code, or just know statistical modeling good enough. You choose the different algorithms or a combination of them, and you evaluate the accuracy. And how do you evaluate the accuracy? The model evaluator has built in. For regression, you can use root mean square error, you can use mean absolute error. If it is a multi-class classification, you say recall, precision, right? If it is a binary classification, you can check the area under ROC, recall, F1 score, etc., right? So it's all built in. Now, one of the case studies, so this is the case study I was showing you, right? Remote monitoring of plant operations. Now, this is 3,000 plus data points and tags, real-time data ingestion. So these 3,000 tags is like typically for one process historian. Now, what you saw here was 15,000. So we were talking about 5 different data historians and process historians, right? So different, so there are LIMS data, which is the laboratory information data, historian data, so on and so forth. What are the use cases? So the use cases are many, right? This is the tool, this is the diagram that you saw, which I was showing. Unfortunately, I could not show you the trend. This is how the trending looks like at the bottom. Okay, so these are the benefits. Now, so these are the various data sources. This is very important. The ability to take in data from data historians, distributed control systems, so on and so forth. Okay, and this is the remote view which I was showing you. Okay, now next let's get into. So this is the first step. See, this is the first step. So while this is remote monitoring, this also solves the problem of your, for example, getting in the data. Now, once you have the data, then let's get into a yield or an optimization problem, right? Now, let's look at the yield and the optimization problem. Sorry. Okay. While this opens, I'll show you both. Now let me show you, let me just explain the context and then it will be easy and then we can take a look at it. So this is the MQ platform, this is the advanced analytics module, and this is the dashboard. Give me a second. Yes. It's loading. Cool. Okay. So I have to just remove the last 2 years. Let me just reload it once. Well, so let me explain the use case here and then we will come and shoot to. Okay, so in this case, so let me show you this. So this is the naphtha cracker yield optimization for a petrochemical plant. So what was the objective? Now this is something that came in from there is something called PMC, Petroleum Management Committee. It came in from PMC. Now the PMC said that okay, now you have got in the data which looks nice. So can you also solve that problem? What is the problem? The problem is typically yield optimization, right? So we said fine, we'll take a look at it. So what is the objective? The objective is your typically maximize the total product value, right? Okay, so that is what it is. Now in this case, so the maximize the profit per hour. So what is the maximization of the profit per hour? The maximization of the profit per hour is product value into flows minus the input streams flow cost minus the fuel gas cost. So this is maximization. So if you're able to, so this is where your for example, product value into flows. So flows is something that means what is the volume of naphtha going in, what is the volume of the byproducts coming out, right, or the downstream products coming out. So that's a flow. So we saw in the remote monitoring, right, the online plant information system, the flow is obtained. The product value is something that will come from the SAP side, right, because naphtha is being procured, so they know the procured price, correct? Now this is so this is input stream flow into cost. Input stream is the naphtha cost, which we know will come from procurement, and the cost will come from the procurement, and flow is something that we saw from the naphtha cracker unit, right? So what is the flow? So for example, in this case, what we were seeing is, so we were seeing what we were seeing, yeah. So see, this is the flow. So 180.3 tons per hour. So this is the inward flow, okay, and then vis-a-vis. So vis-a-vis. So that is the inward flow, and the cost will get from SAP. Now, so and then this is the product value into flows. Now similarly, the product flow, we know the product flow, right? So how do we know the product flow? We know the product flow from here, right? So this is 67.6 tons per hour ethylene, propylene, C4, and fuel gas, right? So all of them are the product flows. So we know the product flow, and each one of them, say fuel gas, RPG, they all have a estimated cost, okay, or like, you know, revenue that we can earn from them. So thereby, so that's the typically the objective function. Now the process output or matrix, what are we optimizing? We are optimizing P plus E. So it's polyethylene plus ethylene ratio, right? P by E ratio, all product flows C1 to C4, etc. So these are the output that needs to be optimized, right? So in this case, if you take a look at it, now going back, so your so this is what, so P by E ratio, we need to optimize this, right? So this is one of the important parameters, P plus E, etc. Now if you go to NCU, so this will have, see, this is the KPI, okay, this is what I was showing you. Now if I look at it, so see, this is the production parameters. So this is naphtha, purge. So this is what, P plus E yield, right? So ethylene, so ethylene flow, PP flow, etc., polypropylene. So all these individual product flows are all taken care of, right? It is all available here itself. So P plus E and P by E. So P plus E and P by E, these are the one of the two parameters which were involved there, correct? Now in this case, so one is available on the top view itself, P by E, P plus E is available inside. So these are the two KPIs that need to be optimized, right? Now let's look at this. That's your out process. And what are the input variables? The input variables are of course your naphtha feed, right? We saw that naphtha feed, the cost of the naphtha, the the target feed composition of the furnace input, blended cost of the available naphtha. Now this is the blending that was happening, right? And then there are process constraints. What are the process constraints? The maximum, minimum throughput value, maximum product flow rates, all operating constants, etc. Okay. Now that is typically, now this is the most important part. Hello. Hello. SBI হ্যাঁ ঢুকে গিয়ে দেখুন ওই সামনের যে ব্লকটা আছে, লিফট আছে, লিফটে উঠে যান চারতলায়, চারতলায় লিফট থেকে নেমে ডান দিকের প্রথম ফ্ল্যাটটা, ডান দিকের প্রথম ফ্ল্যাট। অমিতাভ সিনহা, আপনি চারতলায় ওখানে বলুন ব্লক বি, ব্লক বি তে উঠে লিফট আছে, ওটাতে এতে লিফট নেই, বিতে লিফটে এসবিআই ব্যাংকের ভেতরে নয়, পাশে যে গেটটা আছে ব্রাউন রঙের লোহার বড় গেট, সেটার ভেতর দিয়ে ঢুকে যান, ব্লক বি তে লিফট থেকে উঠে চারতলা। Okay, so in this case, so this is typically the building block of the NCU. So what you get to see, this is a little more detailing the input feed flow, naphtha feed, LPG feed, C5, C6, etc. And then so there are the different machine learning models which got involved. I will explain you this. And this is the product mix, which is the output, right? And then what is happening here is, I'll come to this. Now see, let's understand this a little more. So this is a slightly different ball game in the sense, this is so what happens is 11 predictive models for each output product based on the 9-month historical data using gradient boost technique, right? Now, so see, this is your these are your product mix, which is typically the output, right? And then this is your input. So for each of these product, we built a different model, right, on the input fields. That's one. And it also has to be superimposed with your cost, okay? Now cost is something that is important. So what we have done here is, if I go here, so let's look at this. So while this opens up, so this is typically the advanced analytics module. So see, this is typically like a drag and drop, okay? This is how it is. So this is, you have different blocks, you can read data, you can transform, etc. You can do data operation, join, split, union. You don't have to write down any codes. You can actually open up a notebook and write the code itself. That's what I've done. I'll show it to you. You can do a transformation. For example, categorical values are there. You need to convert them to numeric. So you can do the feature conversions, right? And then you have those algorithms which are available. So you have in the machine learning, you have regression algorithms available. You have recommendations, classification, clustering, time series, dimension, PCA, feature selection. Okay, so all these things are there, right? Once you build it, then you also have model evaluators. So you can use R, you can use regression, etc., etc. And how do you do this? It's like just like drag and drop. Okay, so here we have done, for example, we have read the value. Okay, these are the tags value which you have read, right? And then we have filtered the columns. Which are the columns we need to filter? We did the 2 times the R transformations, right? And then what you ultimately ended up doing was that, so this is where what we have done here is, this is where we have written a code, right? So let me just open up the notebook. This will give an understanding. So this is how we read the data, right? And so this is absolutely a Python code. We are importing the different libraries. We have selected XGBoost, and then we are randomly creating and then we have used multiple Seaborn as well for rendering the charts, etc., etc. And these are the different tags that the value is getting in. And we are, so let me show it to you. Once we read the data on the first go, so these are typically conversions. So this is typically your operating constants, right? So this is the average chord, input, output, ratio of naphtha feed, NCR, so on and so forth, right? Okay, paraffin in naphtha content. So this is the quality of naphtha, right? Paraffin content. And then these are the values that we have started going to and see. Then we run the individual models. Okay, then I'll come to differential evolution. The individual models, the tank comes in, so it runs in a loop, multiple. So we are working on the different data points. We're trying to play around with those input process constraints, and so we're changing it, and based on that, let's look at what values do we get, optimize values. Okay, these are again tag values, and then it keeps on going, and then so this is your the final output, okay, which is kind of predicted, right? Now see, what is happening is there are two things happen here. One is, of course, working using gradient boost for individual models, and then playing around with the different constraints, right, in the lower limits and the upper limits, right? And then finally then the differential evolution comes into play. Okay, now what is differential evolution? Let me show it to you. This is differential evolution. Okay. Now, in case of differential evolution, this is a very interesting, very advanced topic of machine learning. So this is differential evolution. We know it's a stochastic population-based optimization algorithm. It was introduced, not very old, 1996. So what is the objective? The global optimization is necessary in fields such as engineering, but many practical problems have objective functions that are non-differentiable, non-continuous, non-linear, noisy, flat, multi-dimensional. Hence, such problems are difficult, if not impossible to solve. Differential evolution can be used to find approximate solutions. How does it do it? So, the evolutionary algorithms, of course, differential evolution is an evolutionary algorithm. This class also includes genetic, evolutionary, etc. So generally what it does, initialization, mutation, recombination, selection, and then goes into the loop. Okay, I'll explain you how this happens. Now, I will of course share this. I'm sure you are aware of, many of you may be aware of this. So let me just quickly walk you through. So this is the upper and lower bound of each parameter. This is interesting. So what happens is, as I was saying, the operating constant of the plant, right? So the operating constant of the plant, let's say cot will have an upper and lower bound, right? Similarly, the COP will have a lower bound, upper bound. So all the operating constants with which we can play. So in the initialization, we define the lower and the upper bound, and then we randomly select the initial parameter values uniformly over the interval, right? And let's say for 2 minutes interval or 3 minutes interval, we randomly select. Okay. Now each of the n parameter vectors undergoes mutation, recombination, and selection, which means one value of cot is muted, recombined with another value of COP, and so on and so forth, right? Now mutation expands the search space naturally, because you will have that many number of combinations, right? So you understand, right? So that's a combination. Now add the weighted difference of the two of the vectors to the third. So this is how you keep on increasing your space. So with one variable you start, then second, then third, then fourth, this keeps on going. And then you have recombination. Now recombination is where what happens is, so in the recombination, so what we are trying to do here is differential evaluation. We are trying to find out the global optima. So given a particular quality of naphtha which has been procured at X amount of price, so that amount, so let's say Y amount of volume is getting in, so which means X into Y, right? That's the cost. Now what is the output that is coming out? Output is A, B, C, D. A has X1, B has X2, C has X3, D has X4. So this is the output. Similarly, the price of A is Y1, B is Y2, C is Y3, D is Y4. So what is the output revenue that I'm expecting? X1 into Y1 plus X2 into Y2. So it's summation of X and Yn, right? N equals to 1 to whatever. And similarly we know the output, right? So now how do we optimize it, right? Because it's not a straight linear equation in the sense that, see, your output is, one is your, ethylene, the another is propylene. So depending on how much volume of ethylene do you produce, you cannot, your propylene volume will go down. You cannot, it's the capacity of the plant, right? So if you increase ethylene, propylene will go down, and similarly your C4 gas will possibly go down, but RPG will go up, right? So you have to work on those combinations and recombinations, and then finally you arrive at a point which is typically the global optima. Okay, now this is typically the global optima. Okay, this is typically the global optima. So it actually, it is at this particular point in time, it may not be the most optimal. Please understand what at a, so this may not be the most optimal profit, but I mean, or the highest profit, but it is the most optimal profit. So it tries and finds the global optima. So that's the differential evolution. So in this case, in the naphtha cracking, use case, what we are trying to do is, see, I'll just show you. Hopefully this is open now. For some, this is it coming up. So looks like the system is invented. What I wanted to show you was in this case is that so there is the original. So this is typically the actual field and the optimized field. That is what it is kindly doing. Let me just launch them again. Just give me a second. Let's start. Yes. So actually wanted to show you a dashboard where it is showing the comparison between the actual yield and the optimized yield. So which means by running the differential evaluation and the whole gamut of it, we are able to show you an increased profitability in that case. So which means the what is coming out as a suggestion, it is actually able to increase that. Just give me a second. Let me just talk to my server administration person. Hey, Ashish, एक बार आप if you're free, can you just log in and see और NCO का dashboard नहीं आ रहा है लामास डिजिटल में जो डैशबोर्ड हमने बनाया था ना वो खुल नहीं रहा है। NCO डैशबोर्ड कोई भी डैशबोर्ड नहीं आ रहा है, पता नहीं क्यों, चेक करो तो। So I've asked the guy to check. Meanwhile, we can do something more interesting. Overall unit KPI monitoring. Let's see if this comes up. This is coming up. Anyways. Okay. Okay, so excuse me, sorry. So this is one dashboard, one of the dashboards of an optimized result. Okay, so it has come up now. So in this case, this is the overall KPI unit. So you can actually see this is the power of the platform. You can squeeze in, you can zoom in, zoom out, etc. And then you can actually go and see the trend. Okay, overall on the HDS unit, and then it gives you that characteristics, and at this particular point time you know what the individual components are. This is the three different products, LCN, HCN products, etc. This is another unit called CDHDS, and this gives you an overall view. Okay, right, the KPIs. And then if you go down to the individual unit, so this is typically your individual unit. So this is your overall unit, and this is the individual polishing reactor process. So this gives you further more details. Okay, so polishing reactor HDS, polishing reactor temperature, so it gives you all the details. Okay, so at what point in 1 second, sorry, let me change the data set. So that's how the data will get refreshed. So this is your polishing reactor temperature, polishing reactor pressure. So these are your typically the dashboards, right? Now, what I also wanted to show was remote monitoring. Of course, I've shown you. This is the remote monitoring of the plant KPI reports as well. So that's already given. And then what I also wanted to show you was let's see if this opens up product optimization. So it's working now. No, it is still failing. Okay. So let the guy take a look at it. Meanwhile, we can go into further details. Okay. So this was typically the optimization. Now, once a dashboard comes up, I will be able to show you the actual monetary value that we were able to. So we are able to, for example, we were able to increase the profitability by about 0.4. So even if the 0.4 would translate to about not less than anything between like $1.5 million, okay, for the plant, even with the 0.4% optimization. So we have been able to achieve between anything between 0.25 to 0.40 optimization in case of Haldia naphtha cracker, and that translates to about 1.2 1.5 million dollars per quarter. That's a lot of money. Okay, so that's the important piece which I was talking about. And then so this is fine. This is blend optimization. Now this is blend optimization is actually, it's a, though it's a separate case, but this is inbuilt within the cracker optimization, which I was explaining you, right? The blending needs to be there. So that's a blending model. So which I was explaining, right? That you will always not end up buying the higher quality naphtha. You will buy lower quality of naphtha as well as higher quality of naphtha, and you will use a blending scenario to be able to get the optimum blend at a price point which is most profitable, right? So that's a blending optimization model. Now in this case, so again, this is, so in the blend optimization model, what we have used is, we use data science, of course, and then we took historical values, and then we did a, you know, regression analysis here. Okay, so these are the typically inputs, right? Average quality parameter of tanks, blend ratio, real time height of the tanks, and the output is real time blended naphtha quality, real time quality of each tank. So we use, of course, a combination of ANN and molecular models, model trained on past 1 year of data. So that's on the quality. And the yield prediction, ANN model, what you saw, constants, NCO input, downstream plant inputs. And the yield optimization, again, you saw the ANN model, right? So that is it. Now this is something that, this is very interesting use case. This we have not done for Haldia, but let me show you this. This is again very interesting. See, this is for a steel plant. Now what happens in a steel plant is, the whole process, if you are familiar with steel plant, it is actually called, so there's a furnace, right? And where you have the molten, basically, you know, pig iron and all. So there you actually blow off oxygen, right? BOF, that's what they call it, blow off oxygen in the furnace. So it's called a BOF process, right? And then what you do is, so oxygen is blows to, it's an oxidation process, pure and simple, right? To oxidize. And then so what you do is, for, in order to find out the most optimal quality of steel, how do you do that? The optimal quality of steel can be found out by certain parameters. It's called TSC. The TSC, T stands for temperature, S for sample, and C for carbon, right? And what you analyze is, typically, generally you can do a in blow measurement when the blowing is going on, and then you can do an end of blow measurement towards the end of the blow, right, where it has got settled down. That is called TSO. So denoting temperature, sample, and oxygen, right? So this is the two measurements. First is in blow, TSC. Second is end of blow, which is called TSO. Now in these cases, the company that we are working with is Danieli Corus. They are not steel manufacturers, but they are, again, like Lamas, they are like a technology provider for steel. They have something called sublance, and the sublance typically is dipped into the molten furnace. So steel sample is taken out and sent to the laboratory for, you know, testing, and then based on the sample it comes, they decide the amount of oxygen or the duration of the oxygen that needs to be blown, right? So which means this is heavily sample dependent. Oh, my Ashish is saying something. Ashish, hello. Correct, correct. Can you raise a ticket or something? Correct. Check with Ashutosh once. Okay. Thank you. And your ticket lock kar do. All right. Okay, so this is the use case. Now what is happening here in this case is, so what I was saying is, so they have this you know, sublance. It is like a ball which gets dipped, and the sample is taken up and taken out, and it is sent to the lab, and then based on the lab analysis they decide. Now the thing is, this is heavily lab dependent. So the issue are three things here. One is, we know all, right, that sampling itself, there are sampling errors, like statistical sampling errors. The lab itself may have errors, right? Number two, and then there is also a delay in the process. Now what happens is, if you don't end up blowing the right amount of oxygen for the right duration, what will happen is the quality of steel will not be the optimal quality. Okay, it will be a lower grade or it will be a super higher grade, right? Both the ways the plant will have a problem, because see, the higher quality steel is used for manufacturing of, aeroplanes and, medicinal steel, etc., etc. Those are higher quality, right, with great tensile strength and all. But then again, lower quality steel is also needed, right? Your TMT bars and all that stuff, right, for building and all that stuff. And so that is, so both the quality of steels are needed. So sometimes you want to produce low quality steel, so you will use that much amount of oxygen, and in some cases you will need high quality of steel, so that way. So there is a problem in this case, right? So then they approached us that how can we do this. So when we started interacting with them, we realized that there is a pre-blowing chemical analysis, right? So there we find out iron, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, cadmium, carbon content, etc. And then there is blow of oxygen. So blow of oxygen is not only oxygen, it also like dolomite, chromium, manganese and additives. And then there are temperature and carbon measurement in the first sublance, and there is lab sample analysis that is done. So we worked on the historical data, the second sublance measurement, etc., etc. Then what we realized was that these are the predictors, but the predicted variable is the percentage of oxygen in metal at the end of the process. So if you are able to detect the percentage of phosphorus, you will be able to determine the grade of the steel. So based on that, we created model, we started working on it. And see, this is typically the converter, they call it converter, right? So this is 4 converters at JSW plant, your Jindal Steel Works Limited plant at Bellary in Karnataka. There we deployed the model, and we did cold trials. Now, in case of manufacturing, they use this terminology called cold trial and hot trial. So in cold trial, typically you work with the real plant data, but you don't connect it back to the DCS or the process historian, right? So that's the typically cold trial. And then if you are very confident with cold trial, you do the hot trial. So hot trial is where you go and implement the solution in the plant, integrate with the DCS and all, with a feedback loop built in. So in this case, so this is your cold trial data. So there are 4 converters. So we used different models, model 1, model 2, okay, for each of the converters. And this is the evaluation metric. So if you see that, so 91.94% accuracy that we got, okay. So for absolute percentage error less than 10. So which means 91% times, 90 or 91, 92% times, we were getting less than 10 errors, right, out from a sample size of 1000. Okay, so and then we ran it for 4 converters. So because each and every converter has a different why did we end up creating so many models for so many converters? We realized that every converter is unique. One model doesn't fit all. So converter D, for example, has they get steel in a different quality of steel. Converter F gets a higher quality of steel. Converter E, the temperature that is used in converter E, the regulator of the temperature of the furnace is a little older, so you cannot increase the temperature beyond a point, right? Similarly, if you look at converter G is again the pigment. There is a pigmentation which is there as a defect of the design itself. So that is why we realized that 4 different converters had different functionalities, and so we created different models. And here the model was very simple, predicting the quality of phosphorus. But see, in order to understand that, the process was like this. We needed to understand the whole process. So we realized there is an in-blow measurement which is called the TSC, and there is end of blow measurement which is called the TSO. And so what did the TSC do, and what did the TSO do? So in this case, we understood that okay, TNC is the first sublance, and then T and O is the measurement from the second sublance. And what did the lab do? The lab made a sample analysis of iron, which is ferrous, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, carbon, and calcium, right? So it is there. So out of which what we realized was that, so we worked with different data cards, data models and all, and we realized that if you're able to predict the percentage of phosphorus, that has got a direct correlation with the amount of oxygen that needs to be blown, and hence the quality of the steel itself, right? Okay. So this was a very great use case. Now the other use cases which we are currently working on, so we have, if you look at it, so we have solved the yield problem at Haldia, we have solved the yield problem also at JSW steel plant, right? Now we are working on plant maintenance forecasting and breakdown forecasting, which was the first part of it, right? And let me show you something very interesting. How are we working on this? Just to give you a little bit of an idea. Now, so typically in case of preventive maintenance and predictive maintenance and all, this is something that we get. So this is typically a, let's say, a compressor data. Now let me explain this. So if you look at it, you will realize that this is a centrifugal pump data, and it has 8 tags, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So these are indicated by different, these 8 tags. And this is like typically historical data of 3 years. So for each day, what was the value that was being generated by the tag, right? So we got all this data. This is for centrifugal pump. Similarly, we got for charge gas compressor, 2 of the assets, okay? So this is a centrifugal pump, same thing, I mean a similar centrifugal pump, 8 parameters. This is again 8 parameters, right? But different. So we got these two different assets data. And once we got this, so this is what we typically did. So we created control charts. This is what I was talking about. So control chart, this is your mean, right? And this is your mean plus 3 sigma, this is your mean minus 3 sigma, which is the USL and the LSL, right? And this is there for each of those 8 tags, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So there are 6 tags here, okay? And then what we realize, if you see, so anything, how do you understand anomaly? Anything that goes beyond USL or beyond LSL, which is beyond the process capability is. So in this case, see, this has gone down, right? So this is an anomaly. Anything within the 2 red dots, 2 red lines is fine. Now in this case, so these are the 2 tags which are anomalous. So very simple, we plotted them together on a graph. So see, we realize there's a strong correlation between these 2 tags, okay? Both of them are drastically gone down, both of them drastically came up, right? So it was a steep decline or like a straight decline, and it was a straight increase, right? So this is one anomaly that we detected. Similarly, so again, so we did it for this was for the pump, and this was for the other compressor set 1. Now if you look at compressor set 1 again, so see, this is an outlier, this is below LSL, this is an outlier, this is above USL, right? This is below LSL, this is above USL, this is below LSL, right? So this is how, same logic, mean plus minus 3 sigma. See, this is here, it's a lot of anomalies, you can see a lot of anomalies, some of them here has a lot of anomalies, right? This has anomalies, right? So then we created a plot, and we saw that, see, the days of anomaly occurrence is correlated. So this is one set of tag, this is another set of tag, but they are creating the anomaly on the same day, isn't it? Okay, so that's for compressor set 1. Let's look at compressor set 2. Now in compressor set 2, here of course you see anomaly, no anomaly, you see anomalies here, you see anomalies here, you see anomalies here, right? So again, so this anomaly is also here. So then what you do is, you do you do a comparison of the tags and you kind of correlate them, and if you correlate them you will see that the anomalous behavior of the tags have lot of similarity. So they are associated, that means they are combining together to create anomalies, right? Okay, so this is a clear cut anomaly. So again, this is a straight dip, right? This is a straight up. See, this is a normal heartbeat fluctuation. Here there is an enormous fluctuation, right? Similarly, if you see here, there are like drop down deads, right? It should not have occurred. It should have been a very steady fluctuation. Drop down, right? Drop down, immense drop downs. Okay, so you have started working on this. You will find correlations like this as well. So we are trying to find out the pattern also, correlation. Okay, and then of course what we will do is we will use machine learning techniques, to, for example, work on and then how to machine learning techniques again to detect basically anomalies. So we create outliers like this. Okay, so this is an outlier, very straightforward. So we have seen the control charts, we have seen the outliers, right? And then so what we do is very interesting. So there are two ways to do it. We do a multivariate statistical analysis, so where we do a dimension reduction. So of course, because see there are 8 tags, right, and all of them will not correlate. So your principal component analysis will help in reducing the dimension. So there are 8 tags, so we will only find correlation between 3 or 4 of them, and then we do a multivariate anomaly detection. So this is the multivariate one, and in this case we use Mahalanobis distance to calculate, right? That, so what is the logic? So when you put the cluster, you find out that the closer point in question is to the center of mass, the more likely it is to be belong to that particular set. So Mahalanobis, this is like Dr. Prashanta Chandra Mahalanobis, the founder of Indian Statistical Institute, right? That's his proprietary algorithm, the Mahalanobis distance MD. Is the distance of the test point from the center of the mass divided by the width of the ellipsoid. So this is how we calculate. This is one way. And next is your artificial neural network, so ANN. So where we use the autoencoder network. Now this is something that we are trying. Multivariate perception. This is something that is a little difficult. We are still working on this, and it is not yet complete. But using anomaly detection using multivariate analysis is something that we have already completed. Okay. So very interesting. I mean, a lot of things are being done in this particular field. Now, this is something that we have already done, supply chain optimization. Now, in this case, there are in this demand forecasting and production recommendation. This is something that I wanted to. This is something that I was explaining to you, right? Demand forecasting and production recommendation. Now, this is what Haldia uses for understanding that based on the market needs, right? So what is the demand of P6400 grade in south or P5400 grade in west, right? And when it is needed, to what amount? Based on that, you do, this is the demand forecasting, and based on that, you do grade sequence. So grade sequence is very critical, because see what happens is, it is like, let's say we are trying to manufacture P400 now, and then let's say day after tomorrow, there is a demand of 5600. But P5400 to 5600, the transition when you do, there will be some grade which will be off spec. So you'll have to be careful. Okay. So, and then let's say if the market needs 6500. So after 5400, you cannot produce 6500. Okay. Because it is, the transition is not easy. You need 1 day of or half a day of machine tuning, and so those kind of rebalancing. So this is one thing, that there are 1000 variables, 10,000 constants. We use advanced modeling technique CPLEX here typically, and the whole idea is that based on the market demand, you plan your production. Okay, and then based on that, you let the manufacturer, you need to know that this is how you need to produce. Okay. Now, next is spares optimization. See what happens in, you'll see such a large manufacturing plant, you will find lot of spares that needs to be procured. Now the spare needs to be optimized. How? Because you need to know, one, for example, your low moving spares, high moving spares, high moving, low impact, low moving, high impact, right? So those are typically called ABC analysis, because you will have, if you buy spares and store it without using it, you have like capex sitting there, right, not getting utilized. But similarly, if you try and optimize that, you will realize that this is a very important equipment, and if you don't have a like spares available for it, your entire production will get jeopardized. So how do you do spares optimization? The first thing that you do is called FEMA, right? Failure effect mode analysis. So what is FEMA? FEMA is that for every failure, what you do is you do three things, right? You first you find out the impact of that failure. Second is the occurrence of that failure. Since third is the detect of that, and then you create something called RPN, risk priority number or risk probability number. Let me just show you quickly. I'm sure you may be aware. So this is very simple. So this is the occurrence of the ranking. Okay. So what is the occurrence of this particular failure affecting? So let's say if you're talking about a let's say for that furnace, we are talking about the furnace valve, right? So that valve, so valve leakage, right? So what is the occurrence of that? So if it is very high, then the rank is 10, right? So this is a rank of 1 to 10, correct? 1 being low and 10 being very high of that valve being failure. Next is severity. So what is the severity of that failure? If the severity is very high, I mean, like for example, may endanger the operator or the plant, right? So it is very hazardous, then it is 10. If it is low hazardous, etc., shutdown, line shutdown or stop ship, etc., then it will be slower. So higher is the severity, higher is the rank. Similarly, there is last thing is called detection. How easy it is to detect, right? So if the detection is very difficult, you cannot detect the failure from happening, then the rank will again be high. And then finally you calculate something known as RPN, which is this is severity occurrence into detection, right? And this is the lowest, since this is the scale of 1 to 10. So the lowest is 1 into 1 into 1. So you can have lowest RPN is 1 and the highest RPN is 10 into 10 into 10, which is 1000. So this scales between 1 to 1000. Okay, that's our RPN. So once we calculate the RPN, and then typically you can actually go and do a Pareto analysis again to arrive at. So this is something that we use as a starting point. Okay. Now once we do this, then we know, okay, so this is a low moving spare but high impact. So if the RPN is high, the impact is very high, right? It may be low moving, but you need to stock that. Similarly, if the RPN is low but it is high moving, right, it is very frequently needed, so then also you'll have to stock it. So we take a balance and we call it, and then there is also a classification of spares which is called ABC classification, which is called UNSPSC, United Nations Spare Parts Coding Techniques. So that's it. So again, that the first is your coding classification, UNSPSC coding, then you do ABC analysis based on the FMEA, right? Based on that, you give the right optimization, that this is how the spare needs to be maintained. Okay. And then of course is your final, see, once you're able to take care of your yield, once you are able to take care of your plant maintenance forecasting and breakdown forecasting, you are able to predict your demand, you are able to optimize your spares, then you can actually end up doing a spend classification, that where you are spending your money. This is again CFO's paid subject, that where the spend is occurring. Based on the spend, is it based on that spend, are we doing the right spend, we are doing low spend, high, etc., low, etc., correct? So that's the predictive. Then you actually have the spend forecasting and all. So that comes under supply chain optimization overall. And then of course there is quality that you can do. So currently we have not started working on quality control, but which can come subsequently. But as I was explaining, we did work on the yield, which I showed you, which was very important and one of the key areas, right? The yield optimization itself. But you cannot go into yield unless and until you have you have able to capture all the data points that are available, so which we have done using the remote monitoring. So this was our first project. Once we did remote monitoring, we knew that all the data is available. Then we started off, we created this depiction of the plant itself. And then with that, we started the cracker optimization. So which is yield optimization. We created the different KPI reports. And then the yield needed the naphtha to be blended. So we did blend optimization. And because of this, we got a case study, similar case study in steel. So we use that for steel. And now the next logical steps is we have started working on the, I just showed you anomaly detection and plan maintenance forecasting. It is WIP, work in progress. Demand forecasting is already done. Spares optimization is already done. Spend analytics is something that we are working on. Okay. So that's what I had to share my experience for today. I hope the session was, I'm okay to take questions if there is any, and I'm happy to discuss.
Yeah, any queries from any of the participants?
So ma'am, this only explains two things. Either the session was too bad, I was absolutely not up to the mark, nothing worked, I could not pass on or add value to the session. I wasted everybody's time, and that's why they have no comment.
No, it is not that way. Since there is a gap.
It's not like that. Yeah, it's not like that, sir. It's completely into production. No, we don't have much idea about production. And we don't know what kind
We
of
all
questions.
agree to that there is a gap between the academics and the industry. So we don't know. Particularly in India, it is a wide gap. So
It's really good with the practicality. We are not much exposed to industry like production area, so that is the reason why.
But this is something, sir, if you take a peek at the whole world, you'll realize that this is an area which is actually coming up very fast, very fast.
Okay,
Analytics and machine learning had always got its usage in banking, finance. It used to get used, but manufacturing was an area which was greenfield and is currently seeing a lot of applications on manufacturing side.
Okay. Thank you for your session, sir. It was good.
So I want to supplement, sir. Thank you, Amitav sir, for your beautiful insight of a process industry, and also you have given an example of this one petrochemical industry and your this thing also steel plant. Very good insight you have given on how this machine learning techniques and your differential algorithm techniques has optimized to lead to a profit that you have beautifully explained us, so that this gives a new opportunity for the researchers how actually they can give their whatever thing they learned from the previous professors or the speakers. They can apply this thing really in the industry. It's a very good thing you have told, sir. So how this oxygen content also leads to a beautiful manufacturing of your steel from a high grade to low grade depending upon the application, and saves money, and also the quality of the material. That's a very good one you have told. And also in the process industry, just like in this petrochemical, how the naphtha, good quality naphtha and average quality naphtha, you are mixing to this thing to lead a petrol, and which is importing from the Japan, which cost us a foreign currency. So by how you are managing this thing so that it leads to a profit and also saves our money. That's a very good insight, and I think the researchers will get a beautiful insight, and a different fields also they will get, not only the signal processing, as you told that centrifugal pumps, as we read in the first year basic mechanical engineering, the different types of this and how a centrifugal pumps efficiency and the pumping capacity can be governed to lead to a better production. That also you have this signal processing this thing, and also you have told this supply chain, which is a mechanical problem, and you have also this FEMA and all these things you have told. Again, because I did my PhD in this data analytics and e-governance part, where I have used your 3 Sigma, this the 6 Sigma methods on all these things. So this session was very nice, and actually an engineer should know what is happening in a process industry so that he can make comfortable in that zone to do the research. Thank you, sir. This is my thing. This I am Dr. P.K. Patra from School of Electronics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. And so, sir and ma'am, so basically, what I came to India, honestly speaking, in 2011. Prior to that, I was working outside India, right? Also, so what I realized when I came to India, and I used to teach when I was in Singapore. I used to teach in NSU as a visiting professor. And when I came to India, I started working from Kolkata itself. I was a group CIO of a media house called Anandabazar Potrika. I've done the digitalization and properties for them. Telegraph, Business World, were all our properties. So I started teaching. So I do teach at ISWBM as a visiting faculty. What I realize is that there's a lot of gap, honestly, between the theoretical knowledge that is acquired and the application. And that is why, for example, when we recruit, fresh graduates, we find a lot of application gap. And that is where I think, ma'am, we can all contribute. See, I have been.
Do you collaborate for your research with academic institutions?
Well, I do with IIT, I do with IIT KGP. I do with ISWBM on the production operations management.
Okay, so definitely we'll be in touch with you.
I am a master black belt in Six Sigma from Motorola.
Okay.
So I teach POM, Productions Operations Management at ISWBM. Ma'am, since we work in the industry, I think there is a lot of opportunities of exposing these problems. And sometimes what happens is, ma'am, we have more problems in our hand than the people are there. So if academics comes and joins hands with us, we will be able to share the problems, and there will be more beautiful minds like you, and
definitely because from the academics, I think getting the data is also a big challenge. We don't get data, and then we don't carry out the right analysis, which is really useful for the industries.
Right.
Yes.
So if there can be some form of collaboration, then that will be more meaningful and efficient way of doing the research.
Absolutely, ma'am. And in fact, this particular platform that I showed you, TCGMQ as a platform, since I have built the platform predominantly the last 1.5 years, I'm happy to also put up an instance of this platform on the cloud and give access to whoever wants to work on the platform.
Sure.
So that way, even infrastructure is not a constant, tools and machine learning algorithms is not a constant.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for a nice presentation highlighting a different aspect of machine learning into data analytics and how that can be useful for industries. So again, in future, we'll be in touch with you.
Sure, ma'am. I look forward
again.
to it.
Thank
you, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks for all of your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for this nice session. Actually, where we can apply the techniques which we learned actually. That's a very good insight. Thank you, madam, for selecting Amitav sir for this cause, this FDP.
My pleasure. Thank you goes to him.
So thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope the time was good, spent well. I look forward to future interactions as well.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.